I woke up that morning with a strange heaviness pressing against my chest, the kind of instinct you can't explain, but that makes your stomach twist before you even know why. And when I reached for my phone on the nightstand and saw a flood of notifications from my bank, my heart stopped. The first charge was $480 at a nightclub downtown, then $1,200 at another bar, then $3,000 at a restaurant that I couldn't even afford to walk into. And as I scrolled further, the numbers kept growing. $600, $950, $700, $2,000, until the total stared back at me and read, over $10,000 drained in less than 12 hours. My savings gutted like someone had ripped the floor out from under me, and my fingers shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I thought maybe it was fraud, maybe some stranger had cloned my card, but when I called the bank, the woman on the other end calmly explained the card had been swiped in person, multiple times, always in the same neighborhood. The bartender and club managers even confirmed the name on the card matched, and that's when I felt ice flood through my veins, because there was only one person who had access to that card, my sister. I stumbled into the living room in disbelief, looking for any sign that maybe I was wrong, maybe she hadn't done this, but her purse was tossed carelessly on the couch, her jacket thrown across the floor, her shoes abandoned in the hallway like she had stumbled and drunk and left a trail of guilt behind her, and though I wanted to scream, I couldn't even breathe, because in that moment, the betrayal was so sharp it felt like a blade pressing against my ribs. I opened our shared iCloud album, desperate for answers, and that's when the final blow landed. Dozens of photos and videos she had posted without a care, flashing my credit card like a prop, bottles of champagne lined across a VIP table. Strangers pressed against her in neon-lit bars, her smile wide and wild as though she hadn't just stolen from her own blood, and in several of those shots a man appeared beside her, older, rougher, with tattoos scrawled across his neck and a grin that reeked of trouble. He wasn't just some random guy. He was in nearly every frame, his arms slung around her waist, his hand holding the keys that I instantly recognized, my car keys, dangling like a trophy. Panic clawed at my throat as I rushed outside, praying I was wrong, but the driveway was empty, the spot where my car should have been nothing but a patch of oil stains, and that was the moment my legs almost gave out under me, because it wasn't just money anymore. It wasn't just reckless partying. She had handed over my car, my lifeline, to a stranger she had known for less than a night. I called her phone over and over, each ring slicing into me like a reminder of how little I mattered, until finally it went straight to voicemail. The sun was barely up, but already I felt like my entire world had caved in. And when I pulled up the car tracking app, my breath hitched. It showed the last ping downtown near the same strip of bars from her photos, and when I begged the police to check security footage, what I saw made bile rise in my throat, my sister, laughing as she stumbled into the passenger seat, while the tattooed man slid behind the wheel, revving the engine like he owned it, the taillights vanishing into the night as she tossed her head back in drunken delight. Betrayal burned hotter than any rage I had ever known, hotter even than heartbreak, because it came from the person who was supposed to protect me, not gut me, and yet in that fire, beneath the humiliation and the grief, something else began to take shape. Something harder, sharper, unbreakable. I wasn't going to just swallow this and let her walk all over me. I wasn't going to let her laugh while I drowned in debt and despair. No, this was just the beginning, because while she thought she had destroyed me, what she had really done was wake a part of me she didn't even know existed, and I promised myself right then, standing in that empty driveway with tears burning in my eyes and my fists clenched so tight my nails cut my palms, that I would make her regret every swipe of that card, every laugh in those photos, every mile driven in my car, because if she thought she had won, she was dead wrong. This was the first chapter of her downfall, and I was going to be the one writing it. The morning after discovering the charges on my account was worse than any nightmare because it wasn't something I could wake up from. It was real. It was sitting there in black and white on my bank statement, mocking me with every $500 bar tab, every ridiculous $1,200 nightclub swipe, every receipt from places I had never even stepped foot in, and no matter how many times I refreshed the page, the number didn't change. Over $10,000, gone in a single night. I sat at the kitchen table with my head in my hands, trying to convince myself this was some kind of mistake. Maybe the bank would reverse it. Maybe my sister would walk in and laugh and tell me it was just a prank. But the silence of the apartment crushed me harder than her confession ever could have, because I knew deep down it wasn't fraud from a stranger. It wasn't some technical glitch. It was her, my own blood. And admitting that truth out loud felt like someone was peeling away my skin layer by layer. When I finally forced myself to call the police, my voice shaking as I explained that my sister had stolen my card and my car, the officer on the line sighed so casually it made me want to scream, his tone flat as he asked, "Are you sure you want to press charges?" It's family, like that word excused everything, like the fact that she shared my DNA meant she could gut me financially and emotionally and just walk away without consequence. And when I hung up, I felt smaller than ever. Like the world itself was telling me my pain didn't matter. I reached out to friends, hoping for support, but their reactions cut even deeper. Some gasped and said they couldn't believe she would do something like that. Others shook their heads and told me to forgive her, that family comes first, that she was just young and reckless. As if youth excused theft, as if immaturity justified betrayal, and each word made me feel more alone. Like no one understood that forgiveness doesn't erase $10,000 in debt or bring back a stolen car. That forgiveness doesn't fill an empty fridge or cover rent that's due in 2 weeks. Bills started stacking like bricks on my shoulders. Rent notices slid under the door. Emails from the credit card company demanding minimum payments. Interest piling on top of the stolen balance until the number grew like a monster I couldn't kill. I tried applying for quick gigs, interviews for office jobs I was qualified for, but I could barely focus. Every rejection email another reminder that while my sister partied with strangers, I was the one sitting in a dark apartment, living on ramen, wondering how I'd pay for groceries next week. Nights were the hardest, the apartment too quiet, every creak in the walls reminding me she wasn't home. She was out there laughing, probably still with that tattooed man who had driven off in my car, and I couldn't stop replaying the images in my head. The flash of neon lights in the photos, her smile wrapped around a champagne glass, his arm curled around her waist like he already owned her, the two of them speeding off into the night in the car I had worked years to buy. I told myself I hated her, that she wasn't my sister anymore, but then I'd stumble across an old picture of us as kids, arms around each other at a birthday party, and the grief hit me just as hard as the rage. Because betrayal doesn't just take money or things, it takes memories, it poisons them until you can't even look at your own past without tasting bitterness. One night, desperate and restless, I opened our shared iCloud album again, scrolling through the drunken chaos she had left behind, and that's when I saw it. Something I hadn't noticed before, maybe because I was too blinded by anger the first time. In one of the selfies, behind her flushed face and his inked arm, the bar's mirror had caught a reflection of the street outside, and clear as day was a license plate glowing under the neon, sharp enough to read. My breath caught as I zoomed in, my hands trembling, because it wasn't just a plate number, it was a breadcrumb, a clue, a thread I could pull until the whole rotten fabric of their little game unraveled. For the first time in weeks, hope sparked in my chest, not the soft kind that begs for kindness, but the jagged kind that sharpens into resolve, the kind that whispers maybe you can fight back, maybe you can make them pay. I screenshotted it, saved it in 3 different folders, wrote it down by hand just in case, and sat there staring at it until the numbers etched into my brain. I was still drowning in debt, still alone, still humiliated, but now I had something I hadn't had since the night this all began. I had a weapon. Armed with that blurry but undeniable snapshot of the license plate, I felt like I had finally grasped a thread in the tangled mess my sister had left behind, and I wasn't about to let go. I spent hours hunched over my laptop, cross-referencing the numbers, searching through every free database, running it through apps that pulled up scraps of information, and when I finally got a hit, my heart slammed against my ribs so hard it almost hurt. The car was registered to a man named Tyler Hayes, 30 years old, with a rap sheet that read like a laundry list of bad decisions: DUIs, petty theft, assault charges, even a probation violation from just 2 years back. Suddenly the stranger from those blurry bar photos wasn't just some reckless fling. He was a career criminal, and my sister, drunk on champagne and attention, had let him slide behind the wheel of my car as if it were some prize he had won. My stomach twisted as I pictured them together, her shrieking with laughter while he bragged to his friends about how easy it was to take advantage of a girl too stupid to know better, and the anger boiling in me hardened into something sharp, something cold. If she wanted to throw her life away on men like him, fine, but dragging me down with her, draining my savings, wrecking my future, that was something I wasn't going to let slide. I took the plate number and all the screenshots of her drunken photos to a private investigator I found online, a woman named Carla who had a reputation for being relentless. When I slid the manila envelope across her desk and told her everything, she didn't blink or give me a pitying smile the way the cops had. She just nodded, clicked her pen, and said, "Give me a few days." When she called me back, her voice was clipped, efficient, almost electric with certainty. She had found him. Tyler had been spotted at 3 different bars bragging about his new ride, trying to pawn it off to shady buyers, even boasting that he had gotten it from some girl dumb enough to hand over the keys. The words hit me like a knife, not because I hadn't expected him to talk that way, but because he was using my sister's betrayal as his punchline, and all I could think about was how far she had fallen, how willingly she had let herself become the joke. Carla warned me I had enough to go to the police, that we could present it as a solid case of theft and fraud, but the memory of that dismissive officer's voice still rang in my ears, and I wasn't about to hand over control again. Not when I had a chance to orchestrate this downfall myself. That's when Carla mentioned the online listing. Someone had posted my car under a fake name, grainy photos of its interior uploaded to a classified site, the description sloppy, but clear enough that I knew instantly it was mine. Down to the scratch on the leather steering wheel I had cursed about 100 times. My pulse raced as I stared at the ad, the words practically glowing. Quick sale, no questions asked. No questions asked? Oh, I had plenty. I crafted a message pretending to be a buyer, keeping my tone casual even though my fingers trembled with rage, offering cash and asking to meet. They replied within hours, greedy and careless, suggesting a crowded downtown parking lot where no one would hassle us. I read their words 3 times, a dark smile tugging at my lips, because if they thought I was walking into that lot alone and desperate, they were dead wrong. I was walking in prepared. Carla had a contact in the local police, someone who didn't play politics, and together we set a trap. I would show up, stall them, confirm it was my car, and then the officers would move in. The night before the meeting, I sat in my apartment surrounded by every shred of evidence, screenshots, printouts, the license plate scrawled in bold black ink, and rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd keep my voice steady, how I'd mask the storm raging inside me. I hardly slept, my adrenaline so sharp it made my hands buzz, but beneath the fear there was a calm determination I hadn't felt in weeks. The next evening, as the sun sank and the city lights flickered on, I walked toward that parking lot with my heart hammering like a war drum, every nerve on fire, clutching the envelope of fake cash I would flash to stall them. And when I turned the corner and saw my car gleaming under the yellow street lamps, my breath caught, not just because it was mine, but because leaning against it was my sister, laughing too loud at something Tyler said, her eyes glazed, her hair a tangled mess, looking like a stranger I didn't recognize, and standing beside her was the man who had turned my life into a nightmare, tattoos snaking up his neck, his grin cocky and cruel as he sized me up like fresh prey. Fury clawed at my throat, but I swallowed it down, plastered on a neutral smile, and walked forward into the trap we had set, praying that the police were close, that Carla hadn't been wrong, and that my plan wouldn't collapse before I had the chance to watch theirs burn. The parking lot where the meeting was set up felt like a stage built for betrayal, the overhead lights buzzing faintly, casting everything in a pale yellow glow that made the cracked pavement look like a spotlight, and as I walked toward the car that had once been mine, my pulse hammered in my ears so loudly it drowned out the city traffic just a block away. There it was, my car, the silver paint catching the light, the same dent on the fender I had cursed about last winter when I slid on ice. Every detail screaming it belonged to me, and leaning against the hood like it was his trophy was Tyler, grinning with the confidence of a man who thought he'd already won, while my sister stood beside him, swaying slightly, her laugh sharp and shrill. Mascara smudged down her cheeks, her eyes starting nervously as if somewhere deep inside she knew the game was about to end. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to keep my shoulders relaxed, pretending to be nothing more than a buyer, cash in hand, while inside my rage burned like a wildfire threatening to consume me. "You got the money?" Tyler asked, his tone casual, but his eyes scanning me with predatory calculation, and I nodded, lifting the envelope just enough for him to glimpse the stack of bills Carla had helped me put together, decoys mixed with a few real notes to sell the illusion. My voice steady as I said, "First I need to see the keys, and I want to check the VIN." He smirked, tossing the keys up and catching them like he was showing off, while my sister chimed in with a drunken giggle. "It's a great car, you're lucky he's letting it go for cheap," mocking the vehicle I had spent years paying for, mocking me without even realizing it. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached, stalling for time, circling the car slowly as though inspecting it, while inside I was screaming, "Where are they? Where are the cops?" Because every second felt like a rope tightening around my throat, every flicker of Tyler's grin another reminder of how dangerous this was if it went wrong. I leaned closer to the driver's side door, pretending to check the interior, and that's when I caught it, the faintest reflection of red and blue lights flashing against the rearview mirror. My heart skipped, my breath caught, and before Tyler could register the sound of approaching sirens, the lot erupted into chaos. 3 squad cars screeched in, doors flying open as officers shouted commands that cracked like thunder, their flashlights cutting through the night. Tyler cursed, shoving my sister forward as though she were a human shield, and she stumbled, her scream slicing the air as he bolted toward the passenger side, trying to yank open the door, but he wasn't fast enough. Within seconds, 2 officers had him pinned against the hood, his face slammed down on the very metal he had tried to sell, his wrists twisted behind him as handcuffs clicked into place. My sister staggered back, her eyes wide, mascara streaking, and when her gaze met mine, it wasn't remorse I saw, it was fury. "You set me up. You're supposed to be my sister," she screamed, her voice cracking, but the only thing I felt was a cold calm spreading through me, because I hadn't set her up. She had done that herself the moment she chose to betray me for the thrill of a drunken night and the empty promises of a criminal. The police questioned her on the spot, her words tumbling over themselves as she tried to blame Tyler, to paint herself as a victim, but the evidence was undeniable, her fingerprints on the stolen card, her face on bar cameras, the receipts signed in her name. I stood there, my body trembling with adrenaline, watching the people who had turned my life into a nightmare shoved into squad cars, their laughter gone, replaced with panic, their arrogance stripped away under flashing lights. Carla stood off to the side, giving me a small nod, her expression unreadable but her presence grounding me, reminding me this wasn't a dream. As I clutched the keys an officer handed back to me, my car once again mine, I felt a surge of triumph unlike anything I had ever known, but it wasn't over, not yet. Because the cops could cuff them, the courts could try them, but the fracture of blood and trust, the scar my sister carved into me, that wasn't something the law could fix. No, that was mine to settle, and as the squad cars pulled away, her face twisted in rage behind the glass, I knew the next battle would be in the courtroom, where her betrayal would finally be laid bare for everyone to see, and where I would make sure she understood just how far I was willing to go to make her regret the night she chose to destroy me. The courtroom felt colder than any winter morning I had ever endured, its marble floors echoing like a cathedral built for judgment, and as I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands clasped so tightly together my knuckles were white, I could feel the weight of every sleepless night pressing down on me, the charges piling up on my stolen credit card, the mocking selfies my sister had left behind, the hollow echo of my empty driveway when I realized my car was gone, the humiliation of begging for help. only to be told by cops and friends alike that family mattered more than justice. But now, here we were, and across from me sat my sister, pale and shrunken in a borrowed blazer, mascara barely concealing the puffiness under her eyes, and Tyler, smirking with the cockiness of a man who thought he could charm or intimidate his way out of anything, his tattooed arms folded as if he wasn't the one about to face a stack of evidence taller than the lies he had spun. The prosecutor laid it all out. With ruthless precision, $10,000 charged in less than 12 hours, receipts signed in my sister's name, video footage of her laughing with my card in her hand, camera stills of Tyler bragging about his new ride, the online ad where my car was listed for quick sale, the police reports from the night of their arrest, even the digital breadcrumbs I had gathered myself, from the license plate reflection to the screenshots of her iCloud uploads. And with each piece submitted into the record, I could feel the scales tipping, not just in the court's eyes, but in my own, as if the universe itself was finally acknowledging the hell I had lived through. My sister kept her head bowed, only glancing up once when the prosecutor replayed a video of her stumbling into my car, her laughter piercing the silent room, and in that moment I thought I saw something flicker, shame, maybe, or just fear. But it was too little, too late, because the jury wasn't interested in her excuses. Tyler tried to posture, to interrupt, to mutter under his breath about how this was all blown out of proportion, but when the judge threatened to hold him in contempt, his smirk cracked and the swagger drained from his shoulders. When it was my turn to testify, my throat tightened, but I forced my voice steady as I described what it felt like waking up to discover betrayal in its rawest form, how my sister had gutted my savings in a single night, how she had laughed in photos with a man she barely knew while he drove away in the car I had worked years to buy, how I had begged for help and been dismissed because she was family, as though blood excused theft. My words didn't tremble because I wasn't speaking out of weakness anymore. I was speaking from a place of survival, of fury, of the quiet strength that comes only after being broken and deciding to stand anyway. When the jury filed back hours later, the silence was suffocating, every second stretching like an eternity, and then the foreman read the verdict. Guilty on multiple counts: credit card fraud, grand theft auto, conspiracy to sell stolen property. My body shook, not with fear, but with the release of everything I had carried, tears burning in my eyes as Tyler slammed his fist on the table and cursed while bailiffs closed in, and my sister broke down in sobs, her shoulders shaking as if only now she realized the party was over. The judge sentenced Tyler to several years in prison, his criminal record finally catching up with him, and when it came to my sister, the judge's voice was sharp with disappointment as he handed down probation, restitution, and a restraining order, forcing her to repay every cent she had stolen while forbidding her from coming near me. I didn't cheer, I didn't smile. I just sat there breathing, feeling the weight of vindication settle over me like a warm blanket after months of icy despair. Outside the courthouse, reporters tried to shout questions, bystanders craned their necks, but I ignored them all, gripping the keys the officer had returned to me, my car once again mine, and walked toward it with a steadiness I hadn't felt in months. When I slid into the driver's seat, the familiar smell of worn leather and faint vanilla air freshener filled my lungs, and I let out a laugh, sharp and unexpected, because it wasn't just a car anymore. It was proof that I had survived, that I had clawed my way back from the pit they had thrown me into. That night, driving home through the city lights, I realized revenge isn't always about destroying someone else. It's about refusing to let them destroy you, about reclaiming your power, your dignity, your life. My sister thought she had played me, thought I'd stay silent, but instead I turned every careless photo, every arrogant laugh, every stolen dollar into the weapon that cut her down, and though the scar of her betrayal will never truly fade, it has hardened me, sharpened me, made me untouchable. She thought I would be the victim of her recklessness, but in the end, she was the architect of her own downfall, and as I pulled into my driveway, my car safe, my debt slowly being repaid, and my head held higher than it had ever been, I whispered a promise to myself. Never again would I hand someone the power to wreck me unchecked. Never again would I mistake blood for loyalty, and if my sister ever tried to cross me again, she would remember this trial, this defeat, and know that I was the storm that ended her game, the one who turned her betrayal into the very thing that destroyed her.